You don't mess with Rocky. Los Angeles. A high-end gym. The kind of place where people come not just to train, but to be seen. Mirrors everywhere. Influencers recording their workouts. Trainers are shouting encouragement. And then in walks Sylvester Stallone. He's not here for the cameras. He's here to train, to put in the work, just like he always has. At 76, he's still a beast. Muscles solid, frame thick, the kind of body built on years of blood, sweat, and pain. No shortcuts, no excuses, just a lifetime of pushing himself harder than anyone else. He stretches, rolls his shoulders, grips a pair of dumbbells, and starts curling. Slow, controlled, perfect form. Then he hears it. A group of guys, mid-20s, gym rats. The type who lift more for their Instagram than their own progress. One of them, bigger than the rest, 6 feet 2 inches, shredded, all ego laughs. Loudly. Loud enough for everyone to hear. Yo, is that Stallone? No way. I thought Rocky retired 30 years ago. His buddies chuckle. What's he lifting, 20 pounds? Damn, my grandma does more than that. The guy flexes and stares at himself in the mirror. He doesn't realize what he just did. Or maybe he does. Maybe he thinks he's being funny. Maybe he thinks he's untouchable. After all, Stallone is old now, right? Past his prime. Just a washed-up action star trying to relive his glory days in a gym full of real athletes. Stallone hears every word, but he doesn't react. He doesn't turn his head, doesn't acknowledge it. He just keeps curling, finishing his set like nothing happened. But inside, he already knows exactly how this is going to end. A few minutes pass. Stallone moves over to the bench press. He loads up 2 plates on each side, 225 pounds. A solid warm-up. The gym bro sees this and smirks. Yo, Rocky, need a spot? His friends burst out laughing. Stallone finally looks up, locks eyes with him. Nah, I'm good. The guy grins, steps forward, and stretches his arms. He wants attention. He wants to put on a show. I bet I can outlift you, old man. The way he says it, loud enough for half the gym to hear, makes heads turn. People pause their workouts. The energy in the room shifts. Everyone knows what's about to happen. Stallone slowly stands up, wipes his hands on his towel. He doesn't get angry. He doesn't puff his chest. He just looks at the guy with a calm, quiet stare. Is that so? Damn right, the guy says. You lift what I lift. If you can't hang, you leave. The gym goes silent. Even the guy's own friends stop laughing. Stallone doesn't blink, doesn't move, just lets the challenge sit in the air for a second, making the kid sweat. Then finally he nods. All right, kid, let's see what you got. The guy loads up his bar. 2 plates, 3 plates. Finally, he settles at 275 pounds. He wants to show off. He wants to put up numbers that will make Stallone walk away. He drops onto the bench, grips the bar, and lifts. 1 rep, 2.3. For 0.5, he rakes it and jumps up like he just won an Olympic gold medal. Too much for you, old man. His friends chuckle again, but this time it's not as loud. Yo, Sly, you sure you don't need a walker? The guy crosses his arms, smirking. He thinks he's won already. He thinks he's embarrassed Stallone, but he has no idea who he's dealing with. Stallone steps up to the bench, looks at the weight. Then, slowly, without a word, he adds another 20 pounds. 295. The guy's face changes. Just a flicker, a micro-expression, but it's there. He wasn't expecting that. The gym holds its breath. Stallone lies down, grips the bar, breathes in. Then, smooth as silk, he presses it up. 1 rep, 2.3. No shaking, no struggle, just raw, perfect strength. For 0.5.6, he keeps going. 7, 8, 9.10, he doesn't stop. 11, 12. He racks the weight, sits up, and wipes his hands on his towel. Then, finally, he looks at the guy. Is that enough? Or should I add more? The gym erupts. Laughter, clapping. People are whispering to each other. The guy? He turns red, his smirk gone. His friends? Not a single one is laughing anymore. They're just staring, watching as the old man who was supposed to be too weak, too slow, just humbled their buddy in front of the entire gym. And Stallone? He doesn't gloat, doesn't rub it in. He just picks up his water bottle, slings his towel over his shoulder, and walks away like nothing happened. Because for him, it was nothing. Just another day. Just another workout. The guy's still standing there, frozen. His arms at his sides, jaw clenched. He wants to say something, wants to come up with some excuse, but he knows there's nothing he can say that won't make this worse. He just got destroyed. And the gym won't forget it. Ever. The gym was still buzzing. People were whispering, sneaking glances at Stallone, shaking their heads in disbelief. The guy who had just been put in his place wasn't saying a word. He stood there, arms crossed, lips pressed into a thin line, staring at the floor like he was trying to process what just happened. His friends weren't laughing anymore. They were quiet, shifting awkwardly, avoiding eye contact with him. But here's the thing about guys like him. They don't take humiliation well. They can't just let it go. And this one wanted revenge. Stallone had already moved on, grabbing a pair of dumbbells and heading to the incline bench. If he even noticed the guy still standing there, brooding, he didn't show it. He just kept training, kept working, kept being Stallone. But the guy wasn't done. He took a deep breath, squared his shoulders, and marched over. "You got lucky, old man." Stallone didn't even look up. The guy clenched his jaw. "I bet you can't keep up with me for a full workout." Now, that got Stallone's attention. He set his dumbbells down, slowly, wiped the sweat off his hands, looked at the guy like he was deciding if this was even worth his time. "A full workout?" "Yeah," the guy said. "You and me. Set for set. Exercise for exercise. Let's see if you can still hang." The gym had gone completely silent again. Everyone knew what was happening now. This wasn't just about lifting anymore. This was about pride. The guy wasn't challenging Stallone's strength anymore. He was challenging his endurance, his stamina, his will. He thought that was his advantage. Big mistake. Stallone's face didn't change. No smirk, no glare, just that same steady, unshakable calm. "All right," he said. "Let's do it." The guy cracked his neck, smirking again. He was back in his element now. "Let's start with squats," he said. "You got any reps, old man? Don't want to hear you whining when your joints give out." Stallone chuckled. "You worry about your own knees, kid. Let's go." They moved over to the squat rack. The guy loaded up 315 pounds. A heavy set, but nothing crazy. He banged out 10 reps, standing up with a satisfied grin. "Your turn." Stallone didn't say a word. He just stepped under the bar. And then he started squatting. 1 rep, 2.3. Smooth, controlled, not rushed. 4.5 SIX. Slowing down. 7, 8, 9. And then, just to drive the point home, he did 3 extra reps. 12 total. The guy's smirk twitched. Stallone racked the weight, took a breath, and turned back to him. "Next." The guy swallowed. Leg press." They moved to the leg press machine. The guy loaded up a ridiculous amount of plates. Something absurd. Something meant to intimidate. He sat down, braced himself, and started pressing. 1.2.3. Straining now. 4.5. Slowing down. 6.7. Shaky. 8. He locked the weight back up, breathing hard. Stallone didn't hesitate. Didn't change his expression. Didn't adjust a single plate. He just sat down and started. 1.2.3. Smooth. 4.5. Struggle. 6.7. 8. Still clean. 9.10. Then he added 5 more reps, just because he could. The guy was sweating now. "Feeling good?" Stallone asked, wiping his hands. The guy forced a smile. Yeah, let's keep going." They did chest presses, shoulder raises, deadlifts, curls. Every time the guy started strong. Every time Stallone kept up. And every time the guy burned out first. It was brutal. By the time they got to pull-ups, the guy was shaking. He gritted his teeth, jumped up to the bar, and pulled. 1.2.3. Slower now. 4.5. Struggling. He dropped down, breathing hard. Stallone didn't hesitate. He grabbed the bar and pulled. 1.2.3. 4.5.6.7. 8. 9.10. Then, just to drive the nail in deeper, he did 5 more. The guy ran a hand through his hair, his breathing heavy, his confidence gone. "You good, kid?" Stallone asked. The guy forced a smile. "Yeah, just one more thing." He turned and walked over to the ropes, the thick, heavy battle ropes. "Let's finish with these," he said. 1 minute straight. No stopping. Stallone smirked for the first time. "All right." The guy went first, grabbed the ropes, started swinging. Big, powerful slams at first, then smaller ones. His shoulders started to burn. His grip started to fade. 30 seconds in, he was barely moving them. By the time a minute was up, he collapsed onto the floor. Panting, beaten, done. And then Stallone stepped up. He grabbed the ropes, and when he started swinging, it was violence. The ropes cracked like whips. His arms moved like machines. He wasn't just keeping up. He was destroying this challenge. At 30 seconds, he wasn't slowing down. At 45 seconds, he looked like he was just getting warmed up. At 60 seconds, he was still going. And then, just to prove a point, he went another 30 seconds. By the time he stopped, the gym was dead silent. Stallone grabbed a towel, wiped his face, and looked at the guy who was still sitting on the floor, staring at him. "Is that enough?" The guy just nodded. Stallone grinned, patted him on the shoulder, and walked off. And just like that, it was over. The gym was dead silent. The guy was still sitting on the floor, chest rising and falling, sweat dripping down his face, arms hanging lifelessly at his sides. He looked like someone who had just been through hell, and in a way he had. Not because he lost a competition, not even because he had been beaten by a man more than twice his age. No, it was worse than that. He had been humbled, not just in front of his friends, but in front of an entire gym full of people. He had walked in here, chest puffed out, full of ego, thinking he was the strongest guy in the room, thinking he could put an old man in his place. But Stallone wasn't just an old man. He was something else entirely, a different breed. The kind of guy who didn't just build muscle, he built iron willpower. The kind of guy who didn't just work out for aesthetics. He worked out because it was part of who he was. And that's what had just happened. This wasn't a competition. This was a lesson. And the guy? He had learned. He was still sitting there, staring at the floor, his arms resting on his knees, his hands shaking from exhaustion. His body had given out long before Stallone's had. His breath was still ragged. His heart was still hammering in his chest. He wanted to say something, wanted to make a joke, wanted to save face. But he couldn't, because what could he possibly say? Stallone, on the other hand, looked fine. Not fresh, not untouched. He had worked, no doubt about that. Sweat beaded on his forehead, his shirt clung to his body, and his breathing was deeper than normal. But he wasn't gasping. He wasn't shaking. He wasn't sitting on the floor like his legs had given out. He was standing, calm, collected, controlled. And that was the real difference. The guy hadn't just lost because Stallone was stronger. He had lost because he broke first. The gym was still watching. Some people were pretending to focus on their workouts, but everyone was stealing glances, whispering, and exchanging looks. They had all just witnessed something they wouldn't forget anytime soon. Stallone grabbed his towel, slung it over his shoulder, and turned to leave. For him, this was over. Another workout, another day. But as he took his first step, he heard something behind him. A voice. Weak, shaky. "Hey, Slot." Stallone stopped. Turned back. The guy was looking up at him now, still sitting on the floor. His face wasn't cocky anymore. He wasn't smirking. He wasn't laughing. There was something different in his expression now. Respect. Real, genuine respect. The guy took a deep breath, wiped the sweat off his forehead with the back of his hand, and then exhaled. "You're a freaking machine, man." Stallone didn't react, didn't smile, didn't gloat. He just looked at the guy for a long moment. Then, finally, he did something no one expected. He reached out his hand. The guy blinked, stared at it. There was a pause. Then, slowly, he reached up and grabbed it. And Stallone pulled him to his feet. The guy's legs were wobbly. His arms were still trembling. But he was standing. Barely, but still standing. "You good?" Stallone asked. The guy swallowed, nodded. "Yeah," he said. "Yeah, I'm good." Stallone patted him on the shoulder. "Good." And then, just like that, he was gone. No gloating, no rubbing it in, because he didn't need to. The lesson had already been taught. And the gym? They'd never forget it. The kid stood there for a few moments, still trying to process what just happened. His legs felt weak. His arms were heavy. His breathing was slowing, but his chest still burned from the workout. He had never been pushed like that before. Never. And yet, as he watched Stallone walk away, something strange happened. He didn't feel angry. He didn't feel embarrassed. He felt grateful. Because deep down, past the ego, past the showboating, past the need to prove himself, he knew the truth. He had just been given a once-in-a-lifetime lesson. A lesson from a man who had spent decades proving people wrong. A man who had fought his way to the top, not just in Hollywood, but in life. A man who knew what it meant to suffer, to grind, to push past limits. And that's when it hit him. This wasn't just a guy who played a tough guy in movies. This was a guy who had lived it. And suddenly, for the first time all day, the kid smiled. A small, tired, almost defeated smile. Because now he understood. Now he got it. But just as he was about to turn to his friends, something else happened. Something none of them saw coming. A voice. Loud, cold. You think that was impressive? The kid blinked. Turned. Standing near the squat racks, leaning against the mirror, was another guy. Bigger. Older. Meaner. He had been watching the whole thing, arms crossed, a smirk on his face that wasn't amused. It was something else. Something challenging. He was a trainer, but not just any trainer. He was one of those guys. The type that lived in the gym, that prided themselves on making other men suffer, that built their reputation by being the toughest guy in the room. And right now, he wasn't happy. Not with Stallone. Not with the kid. With the fact that the entire gym had been focused on someone else. That didn't sit right with him. You really think this guy is that strong? He said, pushing himself off the mirror and walking toward them. The kid frowned. His friends shifted uncomfortably. Because now, the energy in the room was shifting again. The trainer smirked, looking at the kid. What, you think because he beat you, that means something? Kid, you're not exactly hard to beat. The smirk on the kid's face disappeared. The trainer turned his head, locking eyes with Stallone, who had stopped walking. You're strong, old man, he said. But let's see how much you've really got left in the tank. The gym froze. No one spoke. Because this was different. The kid? He had been cocky, but he was just a gym bro with something to prove. This guy was different. He had experience. He had a point to make. And most of all, he had a chip on his shoulder the size of a damn mountain. The challenge hung in the air. Stallone didn't respond immediately. He just looked at the trainer, his face unreadable, his breathing calm, his body still loose from the workout. And then, finally, he smirked. All right, Stallone said. Let's go. The trainer's smirk widened. Good out, let's start with deadlifts. They moved to the platform. The trainer loaded up 4 plates on each side, 405 pounds. A solid lift. Not absurd, but heavy enough that it demanded respect. He stepped up, took a deep breath, and pulled. 1 rep. Smooth. 2.3. Power. 4.5. Struggle. He made it to 6, then racked the bar, rolling his shoulders like it was nothing. Your turn, old man. Stallone stepped up, gripped the bar, no hesitation, and pulled. 1 rep. 2.3. No wasted movement. 4.5. No hesitation. 6.7. He passed the trainer's number. 8. 9. He kept going. 10.11. And then, just to send a message, 12 reps. The trainer's smirk twitched. The gym was dead silent. Stallone let the bar down without a sound. Stood up, looked him dead in the eye. Are you done? The trainer rolled his shoulders. Not even close. He moved to the bench press, loaded up 315 pounds, took his position, banged out 6 reps. Clean, smooth, racked the bar, looked at Stallone. Try to keep up. Stallone didn't speak, didn't blink. He just added another 10 pounds. 325. Lay down. And pressed. 1.2.3. 4.5.6.7. 8. 9.10. Racked it. Sat up. The trainer's jaw clenched. The gym? Still dead silent. No one was lifting anymore. No one was training. Everyone was just watching. The trainer stood up, grabbed his water bottle, and took a sip. He was thinking now, because this wasn't going the way he expected. He thought Stallone would tap out, thought he would struggle, but that wasn't happening. And now he had a choice. Keep pushing or walk away. The tension was thick. The gym was waiting for what would happen next. And the trainer? He wasn't about to back down. The trainer stood still, gripping his water bottle so tightly that his knuckles turned white. His jaw was clenched, his breathing controlled, but everyone in the gym could see it now. The doubt, the frustration, the moment where his confidence cracked just a little. Because this wasn't supposed to happen. This wasn't supposed to be a real challenge. He had walked into this thinking Stallone would last a few rounds, maybe push himself more than expected, but eventually break. He thought he'd get the last word, walk away as the dominant one, the guy who humbled a Hollywood legend in his own gym. But that's not what happened. Instead, he was the one being matched. And worse, he was the one starting to slow down. He took another sip of water, trying to buy himself a few extra seconds. Leg day, he said finally, clearing his throat. Are you up for it? Stallone smiled. A slow, knowing smile. Lead the way, kid. That word, kid, landed like a punch to the gut. Because this guy wasn't some young, cocky gym bro like the first one. He was a professional trainer, a competitor, someone who built his identity around being the toughest guy in the room. And right now, he wasn't. They moved to the squat rack. The trainer loaded up 4 plates per side, 405 pounds. He wasn't playing games anymore. He took his stance, dropped down, and pushed back up. 1 rep, 2 slow, steady, powerful. At 6 reps, his legs started to shake. At 7, his breathing turned ragged. At 8, he nearly lost on the way up, but caught himself. He racked the weight, exhaled through gritted teeth, rolled his neck, and turned to Stallone. Your turn. Stallone didn't hesitate, didn't adjust the weight, didn't second-guess it. He stepped on the bar, gripped it tight, took his stance, and squatted. 1 rep, 2 no shaking, 3, 4 clean, smooth, 5.6 controlled, 7, 8. His breathing is steady. 9 no hesitation, 11, 12. He went 4 reps past what the trainer did. Rack the bar. Step back. The trainer wiped his face with his shirt. You good? Stallone asked. The trainer forced a smile. Yeah, just warming up. But the gym knew. They all knew. This was over. It wasn't just about who could lift more anymore. It was about who could last longer. And Stallone? He wasn't slowing down. The trainer took another deep breath, rolled his shoulders, and gestured toward the sled push. Let's finish with this, he said. They loaded it heavily. Really heavy. The trainer went first. He braced himself, dug his feet in, and pushed. Slow, controlled steps. Muscles straining. Face twisted in effort. He pushed it all the way to the end of the turf, turned, and pushed it back. By the time he reached the starting point again, his legs were trembling. He stood up, hands on his knees, sucking in air. Then he looked at Stallone. All you old man. The gym was silent. Everyone was waiting. Stallone didn't say a word, didn't crack his neck, didn't shake out his legs. He just stepped up, placed his hands on the sled, and pushed. Smooth, powerful, like a dam machine. He reached the end of the turf, turned, and without even pausing, pushed it back. And then, just for good measure, he went another full length. The trainer sat down, right there, right on the turf. Done, finished, beaten. Stallone stood over him, sweat dripping down his forehead, breathing a little heavier now, but still in control. Still think I don't have anything left in the tank? The trainer didn't answer, because he couldn't. He just sat there, silent, beaten, humbled. And Stallone? He grabbed his towel, wiped his face, and walked away. No gloating, no talking, because he didn't need to. The whole gym had already seen what they needed to see. The trainer sat there, hands on his knees, chest rising and falling like he had just run a marathon. His legs were still shaking. His pride was in pieces. The whole gym was watching, but nobody said a word. Because what could they say? He had tried to break Stallone, and instead, he was the one who got broken. Meanwhile, Stallone? He didn't even look back. He just grabbed his water bottle, took a sip, and walked toward the locker room. Calm, collected, like none of this even mattered. And that's what made it worse. Because it did matter. To everyone. The trainer wiped sweat off his face, forcing himself to breathe normally, but his hands were still shaking. He had spent years being the strongest guy in this gym, the one who set the standard, the one everyone else measured themselves against. But now, there was only one thing people would remember. Not his PRs, not his reputation. The day he got humbled by a 76-year-old legend. The kid, the one who had challenged Stallone first, was still there too, watching it all, arms crossed, face unreadable. Finally, after a long silence, he took a deep breath, shook his head, and muttered, "Jesus, that dude's a machine." His friends nodded. The trainer exhaled, rubbed his face, and stood up, slowly. His body hurt. His ego hurt worse. But what could he do? Nothing. Stallone had already won. He turned to the kid and gave a half-hearted smirk. "You still think you had it bad?" The kid laughed. "No, man. You got away worse." The trainer shook his head. Yeah, I did." And then something unexpected happened. He smiled, because as much as it stung, as much as he hated it, there was something about Stallone that made it impossible to be angry. The guy had earned this moment, had earned his respect, had earned everyone's respect. And as painful as it was to admit, it felt right. He stretched his arms, groaned, and finally muttered, "I have to train harder." The kid grinned. "Yeah, me too." Across the gym, the murmurs had already started. People were whispering to each other, nodding in agreement. Because today, they hadn't just watched a workout. They had witnessed a lesson about what it really meant to be strong. Not just physically, mentally, relentlessly, and no one would ever forget it. Meanwhile, Stallone walked into the locker room, wiped his face with a towel, and leaned against the sink. He wasn't cocky. He wasn't even thinking about what had just happened. For him, this was just another day, another workout, another reminder of who he was. He looked at his reflection, smirked slightly, and whispered to himself, "Still got it." Then he grabbed his bag and walked out.